The Terra Story galaxy was peaceful, but only because everyone was afraid. The Galactic Council ruled over 17 arms of the galaxy with cold control. They kept detailed records of every world and every species. Any civilization that might cause trouble was either absorbed into the Council, made peaceful through force, or completely destroyed. Earth was different though. The Council knew about Earth and had it listed in their files. They called the humans Homo sapiens and marked them as primitive creatures who hadn't developed faster than light travel yet. The humans seemed aggressive, but couldn't work together globally. So the Council saw them as a small threat that could be easily contained. They watched Earth from far away using hidden space probes and secret bases on the moon. But the truth was shocking. Earth didn't really exist the way the Council thought it did. The planet's real name wasn't Earth at all. That was just a fake identity. When the Council finally discovered what the planet was really called, they didn't feel curious. They felt pure terror and panic. But that moment of discovery hadn't happened yet. On one of the Council's advanced warships, High Custodian Railther was monitoring reports from the solar system. The information was boring as usual. Humans were still divided and violent, still stuck on their home planet. They had no space travel beyond their own solar system, no colonies on other worlds, and their communication technology was primitive. They had nuclear weapons, but these seemed old and outdated to the Council. Another decade and we'll sterilize their entire planet just to be safe, Railther muttered, his insect-like mouth parts twitching. Beside him, Intelligence Director Ka asked for permission to begin studying human culture more deeply. He reported that humans had developed quantum computers in isolated laboratories, and in a few more decades they might connect these with artificial intelligence. Railther scoffed at this concern. Let them try, he said. It will destroy them before they can destroy anything else. These mammals can't even agree on their own climate. They're chaos itself. This was the assumption everyone made. Every file and data point the Council had collected painted the same picture. Humanity was aggressive, unstable, and divided. They were dangerous only to themselves, certainly not worth fearing. They were just a minor disease in a remote star system, not worthy of war. Just a small note in the Council's book of control. Then everything changed. Deep in the Council's inner archives, someone made a terrible mistake. An arrogant intern working in the data mines typed the wrong search query. The computer found a linguistic match to an ancient term, a name that had been buried in fire and death for over 10,000 years. The name was Terra. Not Earth, not Sol 3, not human homeworld. Terra, a word that hadn't been spoken in over 10 millennia. A name that had been scratched off all records and burned out of memory. A name that once made ancient empires kneel in fear. A name that had conquered entire sectors of space before, vanishing into legend. Far from the Council's watching eyes, on the edge of the Orion Drift, a lone human sat in an underground bunker. His face was weathered and his eyes were cold. Scars ran down from his temple to his collarbone. He wasn't officially a soldier anymore, not after what had happened to his unit, but he could feel it in his bones. They were watching again. He sipped stale black coffee and stared at the glowing red dot on his computer terminal that indicated a low-orbit scan. The watchers were close. He leaned back and cracked his neck. He whispered to himself. They finally figured it out. He walked to the wall and pressed his palm against a steel panel. There was a beeping sound, then a hiss, as the wall opened to reveal a hidden vault. Inside were weapons that no one had seen for centuries, ones that had been outlawed by Council decree. These were forgotten technologies with names etched on their handles: Legion Protocol, Project Revenant, Terra Core Command. He picked up one of the weapons and smiled faintly, the kind of smile only a ghost makes. We warned them, he said as he loaded a power cell into the rifle. We gave them time, we gave them peace. They thought we were gone. He paused. They just remembered why we shouldn't be. The Council didn't realize what they had done yet. When the archive opened, it wasn't supposed to be readable. The data was protected with molecular locks, created in an age when computers weren't made of silicon and light, but of thought and sacrifice. It wasn't just a simple database, it was a prison. And they had just kicked open the door. At first, the Council didn't respond. The inner circle denied the discovery because denial is always easier than fear. But fear was already growing quietly in the offices and backrooms of Council Command. You could see it in the way operatives stopped making jokes over their meals, and in the way ambassadors avoided eye contact when discussing Sector 7C. Something had changed. They had found the word Terra. It wasn't just a name or just a world. It was a warning carved into the bones of dead stars. The Council's oldest species, the Thalarics, remembered it, but only in whispers. They had myths about a world so dangerous that the Council had purged every record of its existence. Terra hadn't been defeated. It had disappeared voluntarily and quietly, and the universe had breathed easier when it did. Until now. Down on Earth, inside the buried facility on the Siberian Ridge, the man called Grant opened the last terminal. There was no fanfare, just the glow of red light bathing his scarred face. He typed in the access code from memory, not from any prompt. The system didn't ask for verification because it knew him. The screen came to life, not with modern graphics or menus, just stark white text on black. Welcome back, Colonel. Project Revenant status, dormant. Global surveillance, active. Foreign eyes detected, confirmed. Last order, stand down. Grant typed without hesitation, wake the dead. For 15 years, he had stayed silent, living off the grid and watching from the shadows as Earth fell deeper into its usual chaos. There were petty wars, media distractions, broken politics, and division by design, the perfect camouflage, and the perfect lie. Let them think humans were weak. Let them believe the house was burning. But underneath the rot, there was iron. There always had been. He walked down a long corridor, his boots echoing on metal. At the end were 6 black stasis pods, each marked with a symbol, not a name. Names were too dangerous. He stood in front of one pod, seeing his reflection looking back, old and tired. He raised a trembling hand, shaking not from fear but from something worse, anticipation. He pressed the release button. There was a hiss and the low growl of ancient machinery awakening from death. The pod cracked open with steam curling out like breath from a beast. Inside lay a man twice Grant's size, muscles coiled like cables, eyes shut but fists clenched. He wasn't asleep, just waiting. A voice broke through the silence, deep and low and sharp as steel. You finally bring me back, Grant. Grant nodded once. They said the word. The man opened his eyes, pitch black and hungry. Terra, Grant replied, with a grim nod. Then the galaxy just made its worst mistake. In the core chambers of the Galactic Council's capital, Vashtorra, the High Assembly met in emergency silence. There were no media feeds, no translators, just a dozen species, each more ancient and powerful than anything Earth had ever faced. And yet not one of them dared raise their voice. The one who spoke was the Threx Warden General, a creature made of bone and ash, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. We buried them, it rasped. We erased the name, sealed the knowledge. We signed the pact of burning to forget. Why? Why did you dig? The inquiry officer, barely out of her third growth cycle, tried to respond. We didn't mean to. The AI made a match with the old symbols. We thought it was just an Earth nickname. The warden's voice cracked like thunder. Terra was never just Earth. It was a civilization that made gods weep and monsters beg. They fought the void and won. They created weapons that could rewrite memories across star systems. And when they were done, they vanished, not defeated, not destroyed. They chose to disappear. Another council member, a scaled diplomat from the Wormkin, hissed. But if they're primitives now, what's the threat? The warden turned, eyes like collapsing stars. They were never primitives. They were just pretending. Across the solar system, hidden satellites powered by long-dead Terra technology blinked awake. They had been waiting for one command, the one Grant had typed, wake the dead. The signal reached facilities buried under ice caps inside ocean trenches, and inside Mars itself. Weapons that had been outlawed for centuries, AI units with consciousness locked behind ethical walls, and orbital defense platforms disguised as space junk all began to pulse with red light. One word echoed through every old Terra node, Revenant Online. Grant watched the stasis pods crack open one by one. The old crew was coming back. There was Merrick, the expert berserker with titanium bones who had a taste for dropping from orbit without a protective suit. Silas was the tactician who once tricked an empire into destroying itself. Wraith was the saboteur who could melt into cities and leave nations screaming. Thomas was the sniper who once fired a shot through for kilometers of vacuum space. And last of all was the one they all feared, Adari. They never called him just a soldier, or even just a man. Adari was something else. They called him the Ghost Maker. Adari didn't speak when his pod opened. He didn't ask questions. He just stood up, flexed his fingers, and stared at Grant. Time, he asked. Grant nodded. It's time. Adari turned to the others. Get dressed. Load weapons. Burn the maps, the games. Back in council space. Riots had already begun. The information leak spread faster than any virus. The word Terra was forbidden, but now it was everywhere in hacked broadcast, graffitied on city spires, chanted by children in schools before they were dragged away. Whole worlds that once laughed at the idea of human danger now wondered if they had laughed too soon. The fear wasn't about war. It was about what else the council had lied about. If Terra had existed, what else did? How many other supposedly extinct threats were just hiding? The Council scrambled to regain control. They started emergency memory wipes on 5 border worlds, sent suppression fleets, and erased the word from every communication network. It was too late. The fear was already inside them. One phrase became a curse in every alien language: "They're awake on Earth." Grant and the team stood on a launch pad deep beneath Antarctica. The wind outside howled like a dying beast, but the facility was still warm, powered by a reactor core older than any modern city. "Where are we going?" Merrick asked. Grant checked the holographic star chart: Moon base first, then Jupiter relay, then the kill switch. Kill switch for what? Silas asked. Grant looked at them all, his voice dropping to a whisper. "For the Council." There was silence until Wraith chuckled darkly. "So we're actually doing it. Doing what?" Thomas said, checking his rifle. Grant turned toward the launch doors. The sky above was beginning to crack with flame, finishing what Terra started. The launch wasn't quiet like before. Back when the world didn't notice things like heat trails or missing satellites. Back then, the shadows were deeper and cleaner. Now, the moment Terra's sky cracked with flame, every observatory from New Zealand to Norway picked it up. Amateur astronomers posted clips to forums claiming it was a comet. Others said it was another billionaire's rocket stunt, but it wasn't. It was a Titan-class vessel called the Reclamation, forged under the Himalayas, buried for decades, fueled by black core hydrogen, and built for only one purpose: war. Not the modern kind where politics dance with drones. This was old war. Brutal and final. Inside, the crew strapped in. Grant sat in the forward command seat, fingers tense against steel armrest. His eyes locked on the view ahead as the black sky of Earth swallowed them, and the blue planets curve faded behind layers of fire and smoke as the ship broke atmosphere. "You feel that?" Merrick grinned, strapping down his shoulder cannon. "She still hums like a beast." "Still calibrated to your pulse?" Grant asked without turning. Merrick patted the hole beside him. "She knows who I am." Grant didn't doubt it. These weren't normal ships. Each one was encoded to the DNA of their operators. Each one only answered to Terra-born warriors. No alien, no council puppet, no outsider could ever fly it. If they tried, the ship would destroy them. Far above, in Council Watch Post 7K orbiting Neptune, panic set in. Unidentified ship launched from Earth's southern pole. It bypassed orbital surveillance grids. "Impossible," the commander barked. "Earth has no registered launch facilities in that area." Another officer turned, panic in her voice. "It just jumped to phase 1 velocity. It's not accelerating normally. It's tearing through gravity." "What class of ship?" They paused. Then the screen lit up with a name they hadn't seen since before most of them were born. Terra Vessel Reclamation. Status: excommunicated. The commander's blood froze. "Notify Central Command now." "But sir, now." He stared at the growing dot on the screen. It was moving to fast to directly. This wasn't a test or a bluff. This was an act of war. Inside the Reclamation, Grant opened the communications terminal. A red screen blinked. Moon base Sigma, signal intact. Jupiter relay compromised. Alternate route required. He exhaled slowly. "They've already started locking us out," he muttered. Silas leaned over. "What's the plan?" Grant turned toward the crew. "We skip Jupiter. We run the Europa loop and hit the dark side station. It's off-grid, cold, hidden. They won't be watching it." "Europa is a graveyard," Thomas growled. "You remember what happened there?" "I do," Grant said. "That's why we're going." Meanwhile, in the Council's inner fleet chamber, word had spread. Terra had moved. They had awakened a relic warship. The Council didn't ask questions this time. They didn't wait for debate or democratic discussion. They did what they had trained to do. Since the Silence Protocol was written in the blood of 5 billion beings, they deployed the Harvester fleet, 15 kill ships. Automated dreadnoughts with no crew, no hesitation, no moral core. The kind of weapons the Council denied even existed. Each one carried an AI pre-programmed with one mission: eradicate threats to galactic continuity. Terra was back, and continuity was shaking. Inside the Reclamation, as they neared Europa's orbit, the ship suddenly shuddered. A low groan ran through its structure. Adari stood near the viewport, silent until now. "They found us," he spoke without looking back. "How many?" Grant asked. Adare didn't check a screen. He didn't need to. 4. Harvester class. "Closing fast? Do we run?" Thomas asked. Adari looked at him with that blank expression everyone hated, the one that always meant one thing: we hunt. The Reclamation's engine surged. Systems lit up like veins across the ship's underbelly. Missile tubes rotated and plasma arrays spun open. Merrick was already at the fire control station. Oh, I've missed this, he said. Silas coordinated flanking vectors while Thomas calibrated the long-range rail cannon. Grant sat back in the command chair and whispered, "Show them why they feared us." The ship responded, engaging combat protocol, revenant mode. Within seconds, it moved not like a vessel, but like a predator in zero gravity, with movement that wasn't supposed to be possible. No hesitation, no drift. One harvester spotted them and charged. The reclamation let it get close, then Adari flicked a single switch from the ship's underbelly. A gravity lance exploded forward. Not a beam, not a missile, but a black spear of collapsed matter traveling faster than light and bending space around it. It didn't hit the harvester. It erased it, gone, just gone. No wreckage, no data, no trace. The other three adjusted instantly, dividing into evasive formation. They weren't stupid, but it didn't matter. Grant stood up. "We're not trying to win this fight." Silas glanced at him. "We're not. We're making a statement." He keyed in a command. Broadcast frequency open. Galactic. Message begin. A live feed lit up with Grant's face front and center, his voice carrying across the stars. "This is Colonel Grant, Revenant class operative. Terra Division, to those in power, you knew who we were. You lied. You buried us. You fed the galaxy a story about peace and progress while hiding the war you couldn't finish." He paused, fire in his throat. "Well, we're back. And this time, we're not taking prisoners." Then he cut the feed. Seconds later, the reclamation spun and charged directly into the nearest harvester, moving so fast the enemy AI couldn't react in time. It wasn't suicide. It was surgical chaos. Thomas fired the main cannon mid-charge. The projectile split the harvester in two. VENTING its artificial intelligence core into vacuum like a blown lung. Merrick fired the ventral EMP array. The third ship froze, locked in a loop, blind and deaf. Only one remained, and it ran. Adari smiled, not like a man, but like a wolf. They remember now. Back on Council Prime, the inner circle finally broke. The Warden General smashed his staff across the table. "You said they were gone." The intelligence director wiped sweat from his forehead with a trembling hand. "We believe the reports. No life signs. Altera systems inactive. No launches in over 40 cycles." "They weren't dead," the Warden roared. "They were hiding." A newer council member, young and bold, whispered, "What do we do?" No one answered because no one had a plan for this. You don't reason with revenants. You don't negotiate with ghosts. You survive them if you're lucky. On Europa, the reclamation descended in silence. The moon's surface was dead. No lights, no stations. Nothing visible until the ice cracked. Below the frozen crust, a station opened, Terra's last cold vault. Inside were satellites, black archives, data fragments from the collapse, and the last maps of the outer ring. Grant walked ahead of the team. He wasn't smiling or celebrating. He was looking at a coffin-sized container near the center of the vault. "Is that it?" Thomas asked. Grant nodded. "Project Lazarus." Wraith winced. "We were never supposed to open that." "Yeah," Grant said. "But the council was never supposed to come back either." He placed his hand on the biometric scanner. The container unlocked. Inside, something moved. Something that shouldn't have. Something that the council thought had been burned out of the universe 10,000 years ago. Not a weapon, not a man. Something in between. Grant turned to the others. "They called us monsters." He looked down at the thing inside. They had no idea. No one spoke as the lid of the Lazarus container fully lifted. It wasn't a coffin. It was a lockbox built to hold what should never walk again. The room's temperature dropped. The lights flickered. The reclamation itself, miles above Europa, in orbital standby, sent a pulse through its systems, a warning not to the crew, but to the galaxy. Lazarus protocol breached. Inside the container lay a human body, or something once human. His skin was pale like stone rubbed with ash. Wires had been grafted under his flesh, pulsing with dull orange light. His eyes remained shut and his chest didn't rise, but the room knew he was alive. You could feel it like the gravity had grown heavier. Grant stared at him with no expression, no awe. Just cold acceptance, like a man seeing an old wound for the first time in years. "He doesn't look like much," Thomas muttered. "He's not supposed to," Wraith whispered. "That's the trick." Adari tilted his head. "What version is he?" Grant responded without turning. "To second generation." Merrick asked, backing half a step. "You brought him." Grant turned toward his team. "We either wake him, or we start carving a grave for Earth." Silas folded his arms, his face hardening. "What if he wakes up and remembers what we did to him?" Grant looked down at the body. "Then we die." Back on Council Prime, the Harvester Fleet report had reached full transmission. For units sent, 3 destroyed, 1 damaged and retreating, all by a single ship. And worse, there was confirmed activation of Project Lazarus, the last classified file from the Terra Wars. A myth so dangerous that even speaking the project's name was a crime punishable by execution. In the council war room, arguments erupted. We should sterilize Earth now before whatever they unleash spreads. No, said a more cautious member. If we fire on a council-classified pre-sentient world without formal approval, the syndicates will rebel, the core planets will call it genocide. They won't care. Another shouted, not once they find out what Terra really built. The Warden General raised a hand, and silence followed. He looked at the display, an old blueprint retrieved from the forbidden files, a diagram of something that wasn't quite human. Project Lazarus, he growled. They didn't build a super weapon. He tapped the screen, bringing up internal images of twisted DNA sequences, cybernetic blueprints, and collapsed AI simulations. They built the first post-human. Lazarus opened. His eyes, they didn't glow. There was no dramatic spark, no burst of power, just eyes. Human blue. Quiet. But the silence that followed was louder than any scream. He sat up slowly. His bones didn't crack. Muscles didn't strain. Everything about him moved like he was already in control. Wraith took a cautious step back. Merrick raised a pulse rifle, aiming low. Only Grant didn't move. The figure looked at Grant and spoke. His voice calm and flat. How long? 16 years. Why? Grant exhaled. Because the council finally remembered. The man, if he could still be called that, stood naked but unbothered. His body was lined with scars that didn't look like they came from knives or bullets. These were surgical, deep, like someone had cut reality into him. I was supposed to stay dead. You were supposed to be a failsafe, Grant said. Turns out we still need one. The man stared at him, and something flickered in his expression. Not recognition, not hatred, just the quiet understanding of a machine. Calculating the probability of betrayal, he looked at the others. You left me. Merrick's voice cracked. You weren't you anymore. You killed Turner. You melted part of the base walls with your blood. The man nodded slightly. I remember. Grant didn't flinch. Can you control it now? The man didn't answer. Instead, he walked across the room to a sealed storage rack embedded in the wall. Without asking, without hesitation, he placed his hand on the biometric reader. The wall opened. Inside was his armor. Not sleek, not shiny, but a patchwork of old metals, nanoweave, and something that flickered between matter and code. He slipped into it like a second skin. I'll help, he said. Everyone relaxed an inch. But when it's done, he added, his voice like ice, I decide how this ends. Grant nodded. Fair. They left Europa behind with a black box trail for the council to find. A message written in their own language, a code buried in myth. The ghosts have teeth. The Warden General stood over the decoded message. They want us to chase them. The youngest of the assembly, a diplomat born long after the Terra silence, blinked. Why? The Warden looked up, face grim, because that's how they hunt. The reclamation entered deep drift beyond Saturn's reach, moving toward the Orion Gap. No communications. No signals. Nothing but space and vengeance. Lazarus stood at the front viewport, staring at the stars like he remembered something the others didn't. You know they'll sterilize Earth, he said, calm as ever. Grant nodded. We're not going back. Silas turned. Then where? The council's cradle world? Grant replied. Vashtorra. Wraith narrowed his eyes. You want to hit the capital? No, Grant said. I want to expose it. He pulled up an old file. One even the council thought they had deleted. A hidden sector, a vault planet where the council buried their lies, genocides, forbidden experiments, failed species. The truth is buried there, Grant said. And once the galaxy sees what they're hiding, their power breaks. Thomas nodded slowly. They'll never let us reach it. Lazarus smiled, just a slight twitch of the lip. Then we'll stop asking for permission. Back on Earth, the first signs of retaliation began. Satellites stopped responding. Deep-sea data cables fried without cause. Banking systems failed. Space agencies reported anomalies in the sky, then went dark. There were no explosions, no ships, just a silence spreading over the planet like frost. Then, out of nowhere, the skies lit up for exactly 8 minutes. Thousands of small flashes, precise and targeted. By the time it ended, 47 secret bases built during Terra's silent withdrawal were gone. Entire laboratories, weapons caches, and command stations were erased in blinding bursts of kinetic fire. The council had fired its first true warning. Inside the reclamation, the crew watched, the report feed in cold silence. Grant gritted his teeth. They're trying to wipe the slate clean. They think Earth is the only threat, Merrick said. They're wrong. Grant replied. Lazarus turned from the viewport. Let me off the leash. No, Grant said. Not yet. You brought me back, Lazarus said, taking a step forward. Don't pretend you didn't know what that meant. I know exactly what it meant, Grant snapped. It means we still fight smart. We don't torch the stars. We light the right fuse and let them burn themselves down. Lazarus stared at him, then sat down. Just say when. In the heart of council space, panic spread through the less loyal systems. Mercenaries, smugglers, and black market tech traders all started whispering about the same thing. Terra wasn't dead. Some said they had a fleet, others said they had a god. But what mattered wasn't the truth. What mattered was fear. And fear was the one thing the council couldn't control. Inside the reclamation, Grant held a data pad with one message blinking, untouched for years. It was from a man who died during the last war, his mentor, his friend. The message read, if they ever wake Lazarus, it means we lost the first war. But it also means we still have a chance. Lazarus isn't a man. He's a mirror. He shows the enemy what they really are, and when they look into him, they break. Grant deleted the message, then turned to the crew. Gear up. Next stop, Vault Sector 9. Wraith strapped his blades back on. Merrick loaded his cannon. Thomas checked his rifle. Silas brought up the navigation map. Sadari adjusted the gravity drive. And Lazarus just sat there waiting, smiling, because war was coming back to the stars. And this time, Terra was hunting. The ship trembled as it exited faster than light drift, not because of damage, but because it knew where it was. The reclamation had been here before. So had Grant once. Vault Sector 9 was not a place. It was an event, a failure so catastrophic that the galaxy buried the coordinates inside council encrypted legends. Most species weren't even aware the sector existed. Others swore it was cursed, a spatial dead zone where ships vanished and navigation systems turned against themselves. But it was real. And it was still waiting. From the bridge, they saw it immediately, a single black sun pulsing faintly in a dead area of space. Around it were rings of broken stations, artificial moons cracked open like skulls, and satellites torn apart and left to drift. No movement, no lights, just silence. Lazarus stood at the viewport, arms folded. They left it all to rot. No. Grant said. They thought no one would ever come back. Silas ran scans across the graveyard. I'm picking up power signatures from the deepest vault station. Shielded, still active. That's the one, Grant muttered. Merrick leaned forward. Remind me again what they buried here. Grant didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened a locked file on his console. Terra Archive 117 Theta. Declassified only under protocol extinction. A single phrase glowed on the screen. The children who didn't die. Years ago, during Terra's final years before its vanishing act, a secret operation was launched, one no soldier ever spoke of, not because it was classified, but because they couldn't stomach it. Vault 9 wasn't for weapons. It was for people. Specifically the ones who had survived Project Ascension. A genetic weaponization program meant to evolve humanity beyond war, beyond fear, beyond death. But something went wrong. Or maybe it went exactly right. Dozens of children were born with neural systems that rejected control. They didn't feel pain like others. They saw light differently. Time moved for them in strange loops. They weren't soldiers. They weren't citizens. They were monsters wearing human faces. And Terra didn't kill them. Terra locked them away. The reclamation moved toward the largest station, Vault Core. A massive spire connected to dead satellites by long metallic cables. It looked like a tomb chained to its sins. As they approached, the ship's AI stuttered. Error. Identity conflict. Match found. Welcome back, Uni Lazarus. Everyone turned to Lazarus. He said nothing. He didn't blink. Wraith looked sick. You were one of them. Lazarus stared forward. No. I was the template. Grant placed a hand on the command panel. We go in, get the files, extract what we need. Then we burn it. No survivors. Thomas asked. No risks. Grant said flatly. We bring this place down for good. The ship connected to the docking ring with a hiss. Airlock systems wound open, seals grinding apart like teeth unclenching after centuries. They stepped inside with weapons drawn. The interior was lit dimly by emergency blue lights. Walls covered in old blood, rusted restraints, and oxygen tubes, dangling from ceilings like metal vines. Merrick scanned the hall. No signs of life. Skin again. Lazarus said quietly. Silas checked the walls again. Life signs detected. Count, 6. Status, active. Location, deep core, 6. Wraith muttered. What kind of creatures live through 200 years of abandonment? not creatures, Grant corrected. We made them. They advanced deeper into the vault. Past cryohammers shattered from the inside. Every step echoed like it woke something ancient. The place smelled of cold metal and regret. And then a voice. Soft, feminine, childlike. You came back. Everyone froze. It hurts here, the voice said. They raised their weapons. Lights flickered. In the distance, a shape emerged. A girl, no. Older than 10, barefoot, wearing a white hospital gown stained with age and blood. But her eyes weren't human. They were solid white with no pupils, no iris, just glow. Not angry, not scared. Empty. Grant lowered his weapon slowly. Subject Echo. She smiled. You remember me. Thomas backed up. Grant, she shouldn't be. I know, he cut in. Lazarus stepped forward, staring at her. I thought you died. I did, she said. They keep bringing me back. She looked at Lazarus, head tilting slightly, curious. You're not done yet. The vault cracked open deeper ahead. One by one, they passed holding cells that weren't broken by force but by power, metal walls, twisted inward, clawed by something inside. Glass fused with flesh. Doors melted into bone. They finally reached the core chamber, a circular room with 6 pods. 5 still sealed. 1 open and empty. The girl followed silently. Can they talk? Wraith whispered. Echo nodded. Some of them still dream. Grant stepped toward the main console and inserted his clearance key. The lights went red. Files opened. Truth spilled like oil. Recordings, images, medical logs, screaming. Subject Theta 3, neurogenesis failure. Incinerated. Subject Delta 9, kinetic reanimation. Successful. Breach containment, total facility loss. Subject Omega, mental drift exceeded threshold. Weaponized empathy detected. Sealed. And beneath it all, a warning if these files are accessed. Assume the council knows. Grant downloaded everything. I have it, he said. We go. But Echo just watched him. You're going to show them, aren't you? Yes. You want to break the galaxy? No, he said. I want to show them who already broke it. She stepped closer, barefoot on steel. Can I come, Thomas? Tensed. She's dangerous. Grant, she's proof. Grant replied. We did it.